Did you see the stylish?
Welcome to the Young IPA podcast. I'm James, this is Pete.
G'day, everyone.
It is episode 127. We've got a big show coming up. We are going to be talking to David Limbrick MP. He's a Victorian politician with the Liberal Democrat Party. He is at the centre, I would say, of Fiona Patten's new bill on freedom of speech changes and like the 18C on steroids that we were talking about last week. So We're going to be talking to him about his views on that and what the debate is about, and also about the big win for the Liberal Democrats on nuclear power. So we got that in the show. We're also going to be talking to one of our campus coordinators, Theodora Pantelich. Now, climate strike coming up, we're going to be talking about that. But Theodora is a Uni Melbourne student. She received the famous email from the University of Melbourne, so we get to talk to her all about that. She then joins us for the quiz with Pete and Bella, and boy, was it a hot quiz. It was a big quiz. So you guys are going to want to stick around for that. But let's get into it, Pete, because as of Friday, we're on strike.
Absolutely. We're on strike, James. In case you missed it, listeners to the Young IPA podcast, the global climate strike is coming up on Friday. Now, this is intended to fall 3 days out from the UN's Emergency Climate Summit in New York. It's meant to be for young people, high school students, university students, that sort of thing. But something tells me there'll be a few people that are just young at heart also making an appearance.
Yep.
As you said, we'll talk to Theodora Pantelich about how universities across Australia have been dealing with this strike, sending emails, putting messages on their portals about how students...
That's a word Pete learns in the interview.
That's probably the highlight of the podcast, learning what a portal is, and putting messages on their portals about how it's fine for students to go to this, miss class, encouraging students to go in some cases. And the worst one for me, James, was if your tutor decides to go, then you'll have to make other arrangements. So there's all these kids out there that are like, great, my teacher's gone to this strike, I'm going to have to...
switch shifts at work. It's like, well, I need to come in on 6 a.m. on Thursday instead of Friday because my teacher doesn't want to teach us tomorrow.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, so there was a few great ones. I found this one from Charles Sturt University's acting vice chancellor. So his name's John Gurmov, and he encourages staff and students to attend, saying no one would be penalised for missing class, and the university stance was, quote, consistent with its unwavering commitment to environmental causes.
That's good.
So
unwavering.
No one's going to be penalised. Yeah, miss class, flunk exams, create administrative hassle. Yeah. Don't worry, the's no penalty.
I'm sure that
applies. What a great uni to go to.
Yeah, exactly.
Any day that you don't want to go in because it's really cold and you've got a 9 a.m. shoot, just say, well, just really worried about climate change.
Yeah, exactly right. And I'm sure that applies to the broad spectrum of political issues, not just climate change. Anyway, if students do want to go to class because they want to learn about their future and all that kind of thing, there is an event you can go to.
Yeah.
Generation Liberty is running a Go to Class event. Jump on Facebook. If you're watching on YouTube, it's just up on the screen now, or in fact, any second.
There it is.
It says, you can demonstrate your genuine commitment to a better future by showing that you are dedicated to your education and have high hopes for future generations.
Yeah, so that all the details are on our Facebook page for the Institute of Public Affairs and for Generation Liberty.
That's
so if you're not already liking one of those two, then go do that.
Give them a like.
It is like we have approached a different stage of world affairs when the rebellious movement is to go to uni.
Things have taken a turn.
Things have taken a turn for the worse, I would say.
I'd say so.
All right, so the other big story we want to talk about. So, the big culture wars debate in Australia was over Ita Buttrose' comments to this 1+1 show. Now, Ita Buttrose, when she was put as chairman of the the chair of the ABC, that was like showing to conservatives, I guess, that it was like, oh no, we're listening. So
that's right.
It's now Ita Buttrose. She's there, and it's all going to be great, and everyone's going to have a great time.
Yeah, because she's a conservative.
And then this all falls down. Basically, if you've just been watching the ABC, you would have seen absolutely no change. And then so Ita Buttrose goes on 1+1, and Jane Hutchison, the host, asks her if there's any truth to the long-standing rumours that Scott Morrison, when Scott Morrison appointed her, said, I think we should have more Andrew Bolts or Miranda Devines at the public broadcaster.
Yeah.
And so Ita says, I certainly hadn't thought that Andrew Bolt would be a great fit for the ABC. If he applies for a job, we'll consider him like we do everyone else, but it wouldn't be up to me to decide. And then she goes on to say, so there are no job offers out there, Andrew. Sorry, Andrew, there are no job offers here. No, there's been no discussion about that.
Whack.
Andrew's never asked for a job, so I don't know why she got very defensive about it. But it's just like... it is weird because, like, he is my dad, and then we're getting into this. But it's just like, for years, Dad had a regular seat on Insiders, and he was always, like, he did a documentary with the ABC on things, and in, like, a few short years of time, he's now there's no job offers.
Yeah.
They're like, there is no way we can have you on.
That was 3 years ago, that documentary.
Yeah.
And now it's not a great fit.
Yes.
So, and I don't think Andrew's politics has changed in 3 years. So it must have been the ABCs.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would say about this
I don't think it's even the ABC's politics, because back then it was basically the same thing. It's just like the wider culture of just like, you know, there's so many people that they want to sit and watch the ABC from 7 o'clock to 11:30 and go to bed. And if they hear,
Can you not bring my parents into this?
If they hear even the slightest opinion that they don't agree with, we're on Twitter.
Yeah, exactly.
Like those are the people that have changed. The ABC hasn't changed. Dad hasn't changed. People who broadcast every opinion they've ever had on the internet, they've changed.
Exactly right. And of course, it's not Andrew Bolt that's the issue. It's that Andrew Bolt is the most popular columnist in Australia.
Yeah.
So therefore, you're saying mainstream Australia isn't a great fit for the ABC.
Oh, that is a very good point.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
I think I probably stole it from your dad, but that's right. So now the other thing. Now we said it's been a bad week for the ABC. The other thing they've done, is that Jacinta Price. We told you about Jacinta Price last week, an Indigenous woman who wanted to go to Coffs Harbour and talk about domestic violence, required the permission of the local people there to do that. So, you know, that was the big story last week. Now, this story, so as I said, she went to Coffs Harbour to talk about domestic violence in Indigenous communities, and this happened.
Your people got the benefit of my people got you might get your law made saying that they got more rights for our country.
So as I...
A few salty words there.
That's right. We might have to get the beeping machine working that we may or not
bring in.
Anyway, so that's what happens when an Indigenous woman wants to talk about domestic violence. So all those businesses, right, and all those celebrities that piled onto Ellen Jones the other week, they have not said a bloody thing about this.
Yeah.
Right? And isn't that just absolutely hypocritical?
Well, I go like, so the clip, if you are only listening, so that's just like some dude at the back just absolutely giving Jacinta an earful from the back of the room while he's trying to be escorted out from police. And like, you know, breaking news, drunk dude turns up to politically conscious event and embarrasses himself. But the point is, like, that guy, because Coffs Harbour asked Jacinta to ask for permission, and because of all the different, like the problems that she's had getting this event together, it's basically that guy is on the side of the people who get to say whether or not Jacinta has an event or not.
Exactly.
Because it was like, you know, that guy can turn up to anything, but it's the fact that there's other people going like, well, you know, this should never have been allowed to happen in the first place. That guy has a point. That gets creepy.
That's right. And where the ABC fits into this is the local ABC in Coffs Harbour smeared her in a number of ways. They didn't invite her for an interview, by the way.
Yeah.
They interviewed her critics. They smeared her and said she'd cozied up with the right side of politics and that she was a divisive figure among the Indigenous community. Now, they later issued a statement to say it was remiss. They were remiss in not offering Miss Price the opportunity to respond to criticism. But I just think... I mean, just let that sink in for a minute. This is a woman that wants to speak about Indigenous domestic violence in Indigenous communities, and the ABC won't interview her, and they call her divisive. I don't understand what's divisive about that.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, she does have other opinions that the ABC would find divisive, but it's just like, you know, we can't. If she's divisive, then let's hear what she has to say, and then, you know, we'll like, surely the people of Coffs Harbour can decide for themselves from that point on. But, you know, don't want to do that. And
I just cannot. I don't want to go on about this, but I just cannot get over the hypocritical nature of this.
All right, cool. Let's lighten the mood a little by going through our heroes and villains. So if we can have the Grunt the Pig Freedom Snout Trot. What is it? That one.
Give us a snort.
Whatever the snort. That's the word. How do I not know the word snort? Anyway, so this is the snort of freedom. So it's basically for people that have stood up for freedom around the world this week. So Pete, start us off.
Well, the people today that I'm going to give the Hero Award to, so I'm just scrolling down on my computer.
Just bear with us.
During the week, we saw a tweet from the Foundation for Alcohol Research and Education. They tweeted, a social media trend for Instagrammable alcohol products has been blamed for a spike in Australia's consumption of premixed drinks and spirits. Now, from one government-funded organisation to another, Vic Health retweeted this and said there are more than 6.3 million Instagram posts tagged #gin and 8.5 million #vodka posts. Fair Australia has called for stricter regulation of social media advertising. So we know where this is going. This is two government organisations ganging up to bring in more nanny state regulation.
Yeah.
So for carrying the torch of freedom through these difficult times, my Grunt the Pig Freedom nomination for this week is the 6.3 million Instagram posters who #gin and 8.5 million posters who #vodka for carrying the torch of freedom.
The good news for the torch is I reckon there'd be some crossover between the markets. So
Exactly
I
right.
don't think it's 14.8 million all up.
Yes, it is. It's millions of people.
And they only drink gin and they only drink vodka.
And I'm pretty sure they're flammable liquids as well.
Oh, well. Oh, okay. So you want to keep them away from the torch holders.
Exactly right. Be
But the
careful.
torch will never go out. So,
Yeah.
peaks and troughs.
There you go.
Good one. And you're completely right. It's just like, what I don't get with this stuff is the concept of there's a bunch of people that are only hashtagging gin because they've been advertised to,
Yeah.
and not the fact that gin exists and people enjoy drinking it.
That's fun.
And vodka is slightly better by those numerical standings that you
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
Rum all the way. Anyway,
So drinking is my hero this week.
drinking isn't it everyone's hero every week? That's so. Let's go to my hero of the week, and this is like a more of a fond goodbye to someone I've had my eye on.
Okay.
For, I've been paying attention to for a while. Marianne Williamson. It's looking like the campaign is over. She hasn't got any of the polling numbers, and she was being interviewed on TV, and she got picked up by Hot Mic. It happens to the best of us. Pete and I would definitely, like, Saul has enough to destroy
end it
Pete
all.
and I forever by just speaking a bit too freely near a microphone that's on. This is what she had to say.
You know, I'm such a lefty. I mean, I'm a serious lefty. But I understand why people on the right call them godless. I mean, it's like, I didn't think the left was as mean as the right. They are.
Yeah, because Marianne Williamson is someone who gets absolutely pilloried from the left because, she has some pretty funny tweets out there from the past, like the stuff about visualizing angels can stop nuclear radiation, and all the stuff you need to know about modern capitalism can be found from Yertle the Turtle. Like, these are two things that she said.
Yeah.
And it's funny, but the point is, like, the stuff about, if you can pray and it will affect the outcome of, like, school shootings and stuff, sounds ridiculous, but there are people that believe that. And when they absolutely go at Marianne Williamson, they're going at a whole lot of people that would vote Democrat. And so just for pointing out that, like, it is very toxic on the left. Like, don't get me wrong, there are right-wing trolls out there and they're extremely nasty.
Yep.
Left is just as bad.
Exactly right.
Is what I would say.
And so, just to clarify, because you did say before you think she's gone.
Yeah.
So this is it. You're saying this is our farewell to Marianne.
I think so. I've been visualizing angels inflating her poll numbers from day one. It hasn't been working. She hasn't got any of the cutoffs. So it's looking like basically anyone that I wanted to win the Democratic nomination is gone. So
Well, kiss
Tulsi
of death.
Gabbard not invited to the last debate. Marianne Williamson not invited to the last debate. Andrew Yang's hanging on by a thread.
Yeah.
Like, we're running out of good people. It's
Well-
going to be Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren in a three-way tie to get absolutely dunked on by Donald Trump. Like, that's what we're going to end up with.
Well, James is genuinely sad, so I'm
Yes.
going to give him a minute and move
All right.
on to my villain.
Okay,
Oh,
that's
sorry.
going to cheer me up.
That's right. So, yeah, we also do, as you know, the villain of the week.
Yep.
And I would say it's often much easier to find the villain of the week than the hero of the week.
Yes.
I mean, I gave hero of the week to Jin this week, but the villain was easy.
Don't knock your own hero.
I've got to fight for it. Anyway, my villain this week is Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue Service because they are giving Fireman Sam, lovable cartoon from the 80s, the sack. Now, before we get into that, let's just play a little bit of the Fireman Sam theme song.
Yeah, there we go.
Absolutely
so
terrific.
When this story broke, I didn't know who Fireman Sam was. Like, I had no name recognition, but seeing that intro and listening to that music,
Yeah.
like, awakened the childhood memory of it. I was like, wait, this is all falling into place.
There you
Anyway,
go. That's why I did it.
Yeah.
It's virtually a copy
to
of
make me
everybody.
in touch with my own childhood.
That's right. It's virtually a copy of Everybody Wants to Rule the World, released in 1995. Anyway,
Oh, it is.
that's right. I got
That's
that off
wild.
got that off the internet. Anyway, the reason they are the villain this week is because Chief Fire Officer Les Britzman of Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue said, "There's been a lot of research that said that images that young people have about what careers they want to do are formed when they are about 4 or 5. If you are promoting that image, we might be stopping people wanting to apply for the fire service 20 years down the line." So he's saying that women aren't going to be interested in becoming firefighters because Fireman Sam's a fella. Now, to solve this problem, Les has introduced the new mascots, which is a fire extinguisher mascot called Freddie, another one called Filbert, and another one called Penelope. So that's great for all the fire extinguishers out there. They're now going to be motivated
Yeah.
to become firefighters.
So by their own logic, they have eliminated the idea that anyone is ever going to be applying for to become a firefighter except actual fire extinguishers.
I just think this is one of those things where Les is the boss and no one wanted to say Les.
Let's think through this.
Anyway, that's very funny, but there is a sinister point in this because firstly, it's basically what it's saying is you have to be from a certain group to like a certain thing. Now, when I was younger, one of my heroes was Kathy Freeman.
Yep.
I read her book. I went running for like 3 days because, she
How'd
obviously...
you do it? That's amazing.
yeah. So anyway, she was an inspiration for me. And
Yep.
by this logic, she shouldn't be because she's not, the same group as me.
Exactly.
What about Steve Smith?
Yep.
Is he only a hero for white men?
These
Something
are
to
good
think about.
points. I'm still just imagining a bunch of fire extinguishers in a fire truck trying to put out a fire with no humans around.
fire extinguishers are good at putting out fires.
Yeah, but they can't control themselves.
Can't they? Have you spoken to Philbert?
No, Philbert won't return my calls. All right, my villain of the week is The Guardian over in the UK. So The Guardian were writing about David Cameron.
Yep.
And one of the criticisms they levied at him, in a wide field of things you can criticize David Cameron for, this is not one of them. So they said he's only ever known privileged pain, which is the pain that he's experienced is lessened because he's always been rich and things have always worked out well for him. Look, I did not know David Cameron lost a child. I didn't know that. So when the Guardian say he's only ever known privileged pain and nothing he's ever experienced can be that bad, you could forget that he's lost a child. The Guardian didn't. They actually write in the thing that even his experience of the NHS, which looked after his severely disabled son, has that of a better functioning system and better funded parts of the system than, say, if he were looking after an old person. So they've actually gone out of their way to include the fact he's lost a son by just saying but it was privileged pain. He wouldn't have felt it as bad as someone else. How blind are you in your own hatred of a person to not see that other side of things?
That's actually amazing.
Yeah, it is one of the craziest things I've ever read.
Yeah.
That is a surefire villain of the week.
Exactly
All right, that is it for the start of the show. So we'll now go to our interview with David Limbrick and then Theodora. Then we got the quiz, and then we'll see you for the funny stories that we've seen at the very end of the show.
Exactly right. Cool.
Okay, we now welcome onto the show David Limbrick MP, Victorian politician. Welcome to the show from the Liberal Democratic Party.
Hi.
All right, so we want to talk to you because Victoria is the centre of the free speech debate right now with Fiona Patten's proposed bill and whether or not Labor are going to join in on that. And you were on the Friday show with Rita Panahy, another friend of the show, last week debating it. So we want to talk about that and a whole lot of things. But first off, what happened with Fiona Patten? Because that was a big libertarian hope when she was the head of the sex party, and it was oh wow, all these things like the Overton windows being shifted, and then now she's attached herself to this bill.
She used to be cool.
Well, I still think she's cool in some ways.
David's an ask.
Look, I get along fine with Fiona, and I have a lot of respect for a lot of the things that she's done. But I mean, this particular bill sort of just came out of nowhere from our point of view, and I was a bit surprised, to be honest. I didn't really see it coming. So, but I mean, look, she's done a lot of good work in drug law reform. Obviously, there's a bunch of issues where we don't agree on things, but I mean. It's if you're a libertarian, you can agree with everyone on something and you disagree with everyone on something too. So right, and it just so happens that there's a bunch of issues where there's overlap. But I think this bill was a good test of where the differentiation lies, and we had no choice but to come out hard against this because free speech is our thing, right? We're not going to stand and just let new encroachments. I probably don't even like the term free speech. I think it gets confused a lot. I sort of tend to talk about government controls on speech because people regulate speech all the time, right? Through Twitter and stuff like that. You can ban someone, you can block them, you can kick them out of your group or whatever, and people say, "Oh, that's my free speech."
Yeah.
But I mean, what we're really talking about is government controls on speech, and in the private realm, people can happily control their speech and control who they interact with and things like that. And sometimes that gets out of control. And I think that's what this bill was trying to address. And so, there's been a lot of cases and they're awful, right? So I say up front, I don't like some of these cases, the vilification that's happened. But from my point of view, it's really, does this legislation really help that or not? And obviously, I don't think it helps it. I think it makes it worse in lots of ways. So, yeah.
I think that's a really important distinction, because often people who talk about they don't want government control of speech, opponents say, oh, you just want people to be able to say whatever they want, no matter how bad it is. It's like, no, it's just that the people who should be deciding what acceptable speech is the community.
Yeah, I mean, it's the typical comeback that, someone says, oh, well, what do you want to say that you can't say now, right? And, well, I don't want to say mean things to people, and I don't like it when people say mean things to people, especially when they're, pretty disgusting things about, people's gender or race and things like that. But does government setting these standards actually result in a civil society that's more civilized, right? I don't think so at all. I mean, you could take the ultimate extreme. You say, well, government sets out everything that is and isn't acceptable, and we've seen in history governments have tried that before, and it ends very badly. So, I think if you give people the ability to say what they want, then you can end up with interactions and mechanisms to control those interactions. On the internet, you can do that through. There's lots of mechanisms to do that. You can block people. You can choose not to associate with them. There's lots of different ways that you can do that. And I'm sure you guys probably get lots of hate speech directed at you.
I was ready to fill them this morning, actually.
Yeah, I'm sure you get lots.
My friend sent them to me.
So what I was going to say is Fiona Patten's bill seems even a bit scarier than that, because it's not exactly like the government saying this word and this word. It's like up to a judge's interpretation of what's been said, and the judge is just one person.
Well, it's the way it would work is it's through. So the threshold being set through this bill is, and through the existing Racial and Religious Tolerance Act, is through incitement of vilification or incitement of severe ridicule. Now, the current test is there needs to be some sort of intent of incitement, right? Under this new proposal, that test is removed, and it's the result of incitement. So whether incitement actually happened, irrespective of whether you intended to incite severe ridicule or not. And it also extends the number of protected classes. So, at the moment it's just race and religion, and it's extending it to, sex, gender, sexual identity, a whole bunch of other disability, a whole bunch of other attributes. Now, the problem with this that I see, which I think is a really big problem, is that because intent isn't tested, you end up with this situation where someone makes a comment which, may be gendered or whatever on Twitter, right? And the way that Twitter and all these platforms work is people pile in. So if there's a pile in where people start ridiculing someone based on an original comment, then I think it's quite arguably true that the outcome of that was that severe ridicule was incited. And so the way it would work is they would go to VCAT, so it wouldn't be a judge initially, it'd go through VCAT. The bill also gives new powers to VCAT to produce documents. So they, again on Twitter and these platforms, you don't often know who the actual person is, right? It's just some pseudonym. Mm-hmm. And so they would force the platforms somehow to hand over the documents, and then I suppose they figure out whether they're actually under this jurisdiction, whether they can even do anything about it. And so, there's a whole bunch of things. So I think lowering the bar, extending the protected classes, and the production of documents, these are all clear extensions of government power into the speech realm, and that's why we opposed it. We drew a line in the sand and said, no way, we're going to support this.
And that incitement element, incitement can be orchestrated, can't it? It's not just something that might just happen on Twitter, which you see all the time. It's something you could actually orchestrate. If we can incite something here and do it through, people can have more than one account, then you can actually organise for someone to be caught under these laws if you were motivated enough.
Maybe. And some of the scenarios that... so the law... The law as it stands, my understanding is that it actually excludes private communications, right? So it's only public communication. So where you get these private messages through platforms to someone that are really nasty, they're not covered. But if they make threats or whatever, then they're already covered by federal law. So if you threaten to hurt someone, it's covered by federal laws to make a threat via a carriage service. But think of some of these situations, like people like, Clementine Ford, right? She and lots of other people do this. They regularly get nasty private communications, and one of the ways that they deal with that is they post it. They say, "Here's this clown. Look at him. What he's done." Right now, arguably under this, if you posted that and used their gender, so if she was going to deal with some nasty person who was saying nasty things to her privately, she posted that publicly and said, "Look at this little man," or something like that, right? Yep. She's clearly using gender, clearly inciting severe ridicule. I mean, could he claim against her under this? I mean, it's clearly not the intent of the law, but there's a lot of unintended consequences, these scenarios that you can come up with that I don't think that the people that support this law would actually like those outcomes either. So,
I don't think people supporting this law want to see Clementine Ford go down for it. But Labor have said that they're not supporting it until they get clarification on what the religious freedom bills are from the federal level. So, one, do you reckon Labor's going to support it in the end? And second, what do you think about the religious discrimination changes themselves?
So there's a few things. So one of the things that Labor did do that is good is in the reference to the committee, they said it should look at the interactions between state law and federal law, and it should also look at the existing changes that the federal government's looking at the moment. So, arguably, it's not even the sort of thing that should be done at a state level. I don't know, if someone from Queensland says something nasty to you in Victoria, how's this really going to work? Are they going to drag them down to Victoria to sit before VCAT? I don't know. I just don't see how it works in practice. And if you look at the history of the way the laws are now, there's only been a very, very small number of cases, and I think there's only been one that's actually gone through. Now, Fiona was saying, well, that sort of proves it's working, and I'm like, well, I don't think we've got rid of racism and religious intolerance, so I'd argue it wouldn't be working. And if the whole point of this is deterrent, people need to know about it, right? You talk to the man on the street, do they actually even know this sort of law exists? I doubt it. And the cases that were stated as justification for this, would those people who initiated those nasty comments and stuff, would they have known about the law and said, "Oh, gee, I better not make that comment now because of this law's in place and I might get dragged before VCAT"? And no, I don't think so. I'm pretty doubtful of that. And even the practicality, even if you accept that it's a good thing that these people should get into trouble, once they get before VCAT, what's going to happen, right? They're not going to have money for a start, so they're going to crowdfund it. That's how it works. They're going to go to the newspapers for more publicity, and you're going to end up with this great big culture war situation, right? So you're going to get, the Herald Sun and the Australian going to be supporting this new victim who's been, having their free speech impinged, and then on the other side, you're going to have all these people cheerleading for whoever the defendant, or whoever the complainant is. And then it goes through all the motions, and then in the end they get a fine, and then they crowdfund the fine as well, and the person who's the defendant in it probably becomes some minor celebrity. Yeah. That's it. That's if the case actually succeeds. If the case fails, then the whole thing's a farce.
That was the thing with Israel Folau, was that if Rugby Australia just did nothing about it, no one would have seen it. But because they fired him, literally every person in Australia knows what Israel Folau wrote.
I'd never heard of him before. I don't follow rugby, and I didn't know anything about it until all this blew up. And it's a good example, really, of what really happens in these cases. Does this improve the way that people act towards each other? I think it's made it worse. So I don't buy it.
Well, great stuff on leading the charge on that, David. You've been the main person in charge of that and the LDP in general. Another win for the Liberal Democrats last week was the inquiry into nuclear exploration. Why don't you tell us about that and what that means for energy in Victoria?
Yeah, so a few months ago, it was actually a few months ago that we got it up. So we put together I put forward a motion for an inquiry into nuclear prohibition. So for those listeners who aren't aware, Victoria has its own special laws prohibiting nuclear activities in Victoria. So there's federal restrictions, there's also lots of state restrictions. And in Victoria, you're not allowed to do exploration, mining, anything to do with the nuclear fuel cycle.
Does someone want to tell the people in the level below us that there's no mining?
Yeah.
Well, noise is coming through.
Yeah, so it's totally outlawed, except for certain situations like nuclear medicine. So, but in that case, we lean on Sydney and the Lucas Heights reactor. But actually, there's a big nuclear medicine industry in Victoria. So, Peter Mack and a few of these other institutes are doing wonderful work with nuclear medicine for diagnostics and curing cancer and all these sorts of things. But so my idea was that it's time we looked at these laws. They were instituted back in the middle of the Cold War in 1983. At the time, there was no real prospect of going forward in the short term with any sort of nuclear industry in Victoria, right? So it was pretty cheap for the government of the day. It was under the Kane government. It was pretty cheap for them to do, right? No jobs are going to be lost. It's not going to affect anything. No one was really talking about things like climate change and clean energy and all that sort of stuff back then. And we had tons and tons and tons of brown coal, right? So it was a really cheap win. They went to the election saying, we're going to prohibit nuclear technology. And so they did it. And there was resistance at the time. And at the time, some of the people in the Liberal Party and the Nationals, even though Liberals ended up voting for it in the end, but they were saying that, what about in the future? Like, things might change and prohibiting this now might cause problems in the future. And then here we are in the future and we've got a completely different situation, right? So people aren't worried about nuclear annihilation through, socialist empire anymore.
I think James still is.
Well, some people still are, but all right, some people still are. But I think young people these days, they're not so. People my age, we grew up in the Cold War, and there was a very real worry that there was going to be this nuclear war, right? And people were very worried about that. But now they've got a new worry. The new worry is climate change. They're worried that the atmosphere is going to get too hot and all that. So the climate's changed there, right?
Good one, David.
Like that.
Just mark that one down.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the lines I was using is the climate's changed on nuclear. But anyway. But then there's other things that have changed too. The technology's changed a lot, right? The types of technologies that we build now and the types of technologies that are just around the corner, like small nuclear reactors, this has all changed as well. Plus, there's extensions of what you can do with nuclear technology. A lot of people don't realise that it's used extensively in medicine, for example. It's also used extensively in industry, but there's also other industries like space exploration, where it's pretty much impossible to launch long-distance probes without using nuclear technology. And so I was like, well, lots of people always complain about take, for example, the Adani mine, right? People are saying, well, Australia exports all this coal and it's damaging, because they export the coal, people in other countries are burning the coal and creating all this pollution and carbon emissions and stuff. But what no one seems to talk about is the fact that we export massive amounts of uranium. And in the 17-18 financial year, we exported uranium that was equivalent to if it was used to generate clean energy, which it is used to do so, it's equivalent to 96% of Australia's total electricity production. And so our uranium exports are exporting clean energy of a scale equivalent to if we had 100% renewables in Australia, right? Or even better than that, right? So we're doing a lot that's, helping the environment, I think, through these exports, but nothing is happening in Victoria at all because it's prohibited. And we need to ask questions. Is this the right thing to do? Should this? So the inquiry is going to start probably in November, and we'll be accepting submissions. But the gist of the inquiry is looking at the prohibitions and would there be benefits to Victoria of lifting those prohibitions. So looking at environmental benefits, economic benefits, social benefits, and these sort of things. So yeah.
Yeah, because we were going to say, there's the student climate strike this Friday, and you talk about all the environmental benefits. So surely we should be seeing a few signs this weekend about the benefits of nuclear power.
Well,
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, I'm actually going to be attending Climate Strike.
Really?
You're going to take the day off school.
I'm going to take the day off school. So, look, I went to one before. I want to talk to people who are going to these things. From my experience, a lot of these young people are quite open to the idea of nuclear. So the idea that people who are environmentalists are anti-nuclear, I think, is changing and is wrong. In fact, the environmental movement globally is sort of splitting, and I think, if you talk to people who are looking at this, they'll say, splitting into two parts, right? You've got what they call the dark green environmentalism and the sort of eco-modernism. And the dark green environmentalism is like, the ones that you would typically associate with this, right? So, the end of the world is coming. We need total economic and social reorganisation, basically state control of everything to do with energy, and humanity needs to pay its penance or we're all going to die, sort of thing, right? And that's where that's coming from. And the eco-modernist is, and I'd probably put myself in this camp, there's problems, right? Absolutely, there's problems, but, humanity's pretty good at solving problems. We've got lots of technologies that we can use to address these problems, and we don't think that humanity has to suffer extreme poverty and deprivation to solve these problems, and maybe we need to look at removing some of the prohibitions.
All right, David, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
David.
Okay, we now welcome onto the show one of our campus coordinators here at the IPA, Theodora Pantelich. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Now, Theodora, we're bringing you in because you received a lot of students around Australia received quite the email from their universities recently. So do you want to tell us what you received?
Yeah, so I logged onto the Melbourne Uni portal one day and saw a message from the administration saying the University of Melbourne supports the Climate Day of Action, like the Extinction Rebellion thing, this Friday, 20th of September. Arrangements will be made so that you can attend if you wish. You can skip class. Academics that want to attend are also allowed to basically make arrangements for that and cancel their classes to go to the protest. And my first thought was basically, well, isn't it funny that a university is supporting a movement which is saying that humans are going to be extinct a few years down the track, right? Because if they genuinely believed that, they may as well just give up because no one's going to be going to class like 10 years down the track, right?
It's true. Yep.
So it sort of just points out what kind of a really shallow... it's such a stupid thing to do. It's such a classic example of virtue signalling.
Yeah.
Before we get into that, can you describe to me what a portal is?
Yeah, Pete and I would have done so much better at university if we knew what a portal was.
So the portal is a magical place. You log in with a username and a password, and all the information you need to succeed is on the portal.
There you go.
Yeah. So the university, they were literally saying, like, they will encourage students and encourage teachers to make changes for students that are going to the protest. Not just like if you want to go, fine, but that's at your own peril and you need to figure out what you're doing. Yeah. It is like, look, what can we do?
Yeah, literally.
What can we do to help you?
So I think La Trobe University had a much more reasonable response to this. They said, if you want to attend, obviously you can attend, but you still have to submit all your assignments that are due on that day. You still have to make sure you pass the attendance hurdle.
Fascists.
Yeah, I know, right? But
bloody fascists.
Imagine having to go to class. What a concept. But Melbourne Uni is just like, no, the academics can go, the students can go, and we fully support what the Extinction Rebellion movement is trying to do.
Right, because this email has set off quite the discussion among all of our campus coordinators across Australia. Now, is the University of Melbourne, is their response the worst of them all, or is there like an even worse one?
I think most of the unis have been pretty similar. The academics at a lot of these unis are already really invested in this really alarmist environmentalist cause anyway. So like the day-to-day lectures and shoots at these unis are already full of this kind of stuff. So it's not really a new concept, I think, at a lot of these unis.
So this sort of demonstrates that this is a bias problem at universities, because I can't imagine there being special arrangements being made for students who want to not go to class to go to like a nuclear rally or something.
Yeah, exactly. It does raise a question. A student certainly wouldn't be given permission to attend a nuclear rally and skip class because of that. And I think, there is a very serious problem at universities right now in the administration and the actual academia itself, as well as among the students. Because, if you're at uni, you're young, idealistic, you have a revolutionary phase. I mean, I didn't, but
That's coming.
Theodore missed a revolutionary
I
phase.
did. I skipped that. I mean, looking at you, Pete, I'm sure you voted Greens.
I did.
Once
I
upon a
definitely
time.
voted Greens.
Yeah. See, I
in the
told you.
70s when I was 18.
There you go.
Or you're making those jokes now.
Yeah, we're making it.
Okay, so how'd this go down with students? Because definitely the campus coordinators, they were having a big old laugh on the Slack channels. But how'd it go down with students through uni? Are they going wow, can't believe our uni's taking such a role? Or is it how come they get to skip class and I don't?
I think, well, obviously there is that very loud sort of radicalized minority on campus, which is isn't the uni being amazing and standing up for climate action and whatever? But for most students, it's just really inconvenient that they're now going to have to attend alternative classes because their tutor might want to attend the rally. A lot.
Yeah, I did think that. That's so bad.
Yeah.
So I got to switch shifts down to wherever I'm working.
Yeah, literally. It's only going to inconvenience the majority of students who actually, kind of care about the results, kind of care about uni, are actually there for the right reasons. And yeah, most students aren't activists. They don't really care about the Extinction Rebellion stuff, and they just want to, get on with their work.
To what extent do you guys get bombarded with climate change stuff at uni? Because I feel like it's a lot.
There's a lot, for sure. Basically every discipline. I know as an art student, I see it all the time in history classes. For example, I had this, I did a subject last semester on British history from 1600 to 1800. The lecturer in that talked to us about the Extinction Rebellion protest, said it's fantastic stuff, and he was like, the women in this class, I would recommend that you don't have children because of climate change, because of because of overpopulation, because of climate change. And I'm just sitting there being like, is a man just telling me what to do with my body? Isn't this a classic?
No, it's cool. He's left wing. It's fine.
Yeah.
He's doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah. And then I did another subject this semester, which I dropped for obvious reasons. There was going to be a series of lectures. The first one was going to be called, I have it written down, so Climate Change, Is Capitalism the Problem? And the second one was going to be Climate Change, Is Eco-Socialism the Answer?
Ooh, were they? Did you make it that far?
I didn't make it that far.
Well.
I saw that and I was like, well, I'm going to drop out of this before I
What
have
was
to
the
sit through
subject?
It was a subject, it was sort of a generic breadth subject, multidisciplinary stuff.
Right.
It's rough.
Yeah, so
I
it's-
had power for my multidisciplinary one.
Power.
Which was literally by week 3, it was this hour-long lecture about how you behave differently at work than you do with your friends. I'm like, someone got paid for this.
Yeah,
that was a research report.
Power's a pretty notorious one. There's a lecturer in Power he always starts out the semester saying, if I don't make 90% of you communists by the end of this, I'm not doing my job right.
Really?
That's a story I've heard. I did Reason, the reasonable option rather than Power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, trust me, I got regrets.
I didn't realise you meant to behave differently at work.
Yeah.
That would have been good to do power.
All right, sweet. Last thing we got, unless you had any more on
No,
this
that's
one.
all I had.
All right, so last thing we got, we saw over the weekend a Instagram page or a Facebook page, Brown Cardigan got banned. Now, apparently they're back on. Now, first off, what is Brown Cardigan? And second, what's been the reaction there?
Brown Cardigan is this very Aussie-themed meme page. I don't get a lot of the humour on it.
Yep.
I'm not gonna lie.
All right, well, Pete, maybe you
It's
can
pretty-
unpack it.
No, it's pretty funny. There was this one thing where a guy just wedges a pint of, I don't know, a beer glass into his mouth and just skulls it. I didn't understand it, but I could appreciate it.
Yeah.
But apparently,
It's an athletic feat.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Yeah,
So is it just drunk people doing things, but Australian version?
Drunk and other stuff.
Right. Okay. So and then drunk people doing things has a few offshoots as well into more illicit substances. But so is that the idea?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
I thought you were talking to Theodore. Yeah, no, that is
a quest for the panel.
that is the idea.
So it gets banned
It's very
because
funny.
depicting equals glorifying.
Well, they don't really know why it got banned.
Right.
But they've got put back on, then they got banned again, then they got put back on.
Okay.
But the thing which got them banned was this person sculling a froth.
Right.
Which-
'Cause it's never happened.
Yeah.
It would never happen again unless we'd had a video of it.
Literally prime ministers have done that.
I
Get
found it
hailed.
pretty funny. It's not edgy content.
No.
It's
Nah,
sort of edgy, but it's just
Yeah.
Yeah.
why stop people having fun?
Exactly. Imagine that page getting banned in the Bob Hawke prime ministership.
You'd be a
It'd be the
bum.
day of
You'd be a
mourning.
bum. Yeah, exactly. No, we've got a pint of beer for Theodore to scull.
Oh, really?
Just kidding, Theodore. We'd never do that to you. It's irresponsible.
Yeah, well, we could have gone famous on Brown Cardigan. But yeah, so like, is that the kind of thing that gets through to people who are young, where these pages get banned and it's like this natty state, oh, we don't want that sort of stuff on? Do people go like, well, I'll make the choice of whether or not I want to pursue a life in Brown Cardigan sponsored content? That's up to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this whole shadow banning thing, reporting online content for trivial reasons, like because it's triggering or inappropriate or whatever, it kind of does annoy a lot of younger people because everyone has their own sense of humor. Everyone wants to see different content online. You can't really over-regulate what happens on the internet because people are going to do what they want to do.
Yeah. There will always be videos of people downing beers on the internet.
Exactly. And if you're going to start removing content off the internet, don't start with harmless, weird Aussie memes. There's a lot worse on the internet that you could be looking at fixing.
I have no idea what you're talking about. All right, so Theodora, you're sticking around for the quiz, which we're going to have a brief break of like 5 seconds on the show, and then we'll be back with the quiz. Okay, welcome back to another round of Hey, What Did We Miss? The IPA's weekly quiz. We've got 3 contestants with us today.
Yep.
We've got Dr. Bella De-Brera, 3-time defending champion?
Yes.
This will be her fourth
This will be her 4th time. Oh, Pete's already conceding that this is going to be her 4th time.
If she wins, this will be
She
her
won't win. She's not going to.
And Theodora, we just had you on for an interview coming back for the quiz. And of course, our beloved Peter Gregory, co-host, man extraordinaire.
Wow.
This will be the week.
You've been reading my blog, James.
That is my line.
Well,
thank you.
I guess
not to
it's
use
mine
it.
now.
All right. So, Theodora, this is your first time on the quiz. So, just in case, I know you've listened to the quiz, and just in case anyone out there needs a refresher on the rules. So 1 point for each correct answer, 1 point against for any incorrect answer. I just realised I forgot a pen, and I'm going to have to do this all mentally again. Does anyone have a pen?
Do it on your phone.
Do it on my phone? That's going to not work. All right.
Okay.
I can do this mentally.
Okay.
And if there's a brief break while I go get a pen, we'll just see. And what do you know, through the magic of editing, a pen has appeared in my hand. So I officially never made a mistake, and we can start the quiz as usual. So, buzzers. So buzzers is going to be your first name. So Bella.
Bella.
And Pete.
Roof.
Now, the roof seal. Now, Theodora, you didn't want to go with Theodora. I think you've acknowledged that it's a bit long. It might hurt.
4 syllables.
So,
I'm going to go TP, my initials.
TB.
Yeah.
Well, still 2
TP.
syllables. TP.
TP.
Yep. Okay. That's better.
Does that work?
That works.
TP.
That's
All
pretty
right.
quick, actually.
It is.
Very
TP.
quick. Ooh.
You can get that really quick, actually. TP.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough of this. All right. So let's get straight into it. So, question 1: Mayor Clover Moore decided last week to stop wearing the City of Sydney's historic mayoral chains. Why?
Bella. Because it was meant to be anti-Indigenous.
Yeah, it was. Do you remember the phrase that's on it?
I take, but I surrender.
That is correct.
Oh my God, that's why she's the queen of quizzes.
Yeah, sorry. It was this whole thing, like she says, it's about Indigenous culture. And then we had Zach Gorman, one of our staff members in here, say actually even cursory look at the City of Sydney's own website would show you what the actual meaning was.
A 15-second quiz. 15-second look.
15-second look.
Wow.
You got there eventually.
Yeah.
It was a 15-second statement from Pete.
That's right.
All right. Question 2. So last week, the chairman of the ABC said Andrew Bolt wouldn't be welcome on the ABC and said that the IPA has already saturated the market of ABC appearances. Ooh. Who is the chairman of the ABC? Roof Seal.
Ida Buttrose.
It is indeed. Roof Seal is on the board. All right. Last night, Boris Johnson skipped a press conference with a country...
Bella.
Oh, Theodora, I saw you lean in. You didn't get the TP off.
Luxembourg.
Luxembourg is correct.
On, this is it.
This could be it.
All the fans are looking at each other going, is this it? Is he going to stuff it up again?
It's just a murmur. It's just a slow murmur it's building. Yeah. So, yeah, that was like, if anyone didn't see it, there's a hilarious press conference where it's just the president of Luxembourg next to an empty podium because Boris Johnson ran off. All right, so Gladys Liu, all over the news right now, whether or not she has links to other countries. What seat does she represent?
TP.
Oh.
TP.
Chisholm.
I knew that. I used to live in Chisholm.
Well, there you go.
I should have said it.
That would have been a few questions I had after that. I was going to, if you guys didn't know it, I was going to go, it starts with a C-H-I.
It ends with a
Who
O-L-M.
knows? All right. Which famous journalist and author's new book just out is called Talking to Strangers? Oh, very famous guy.
That's a good one.
It is a good question. I was pretty proud of myself, I'm not going to lie.
Talking to strangers.
Now, this is the part where I
Journalist.
encourage people to think out loud.
Did you say journalist and...
It's hard enough to
journalist, author,
I was reading about this.
like social researcher. You could say his
talking.
famous reached the tipping point.
Roof.
Oh,
Malcolm Gladwell.
There it is. This could be it.
This could be it. What's Bella on? 1?
I've never
All
heard
right,
of
so
Malcolm
yeah, score
Gladwell.
check. So Peter Gregory 3, Bella 1, Theodora 1. We're halfway through.
Oh my god.
This could be it.
I could choke.
You'd hate to choke this.
Just start
You
hitting the
would hate
post,
to choke
like-
this.
Yeah.
Yeah. At this point, I would encourage all of you to just go. It'd be a real shame.
Yeah. Get on the
It would
sledge.
be a real shame.
Or go the knuckle, like in the country. Anyway.
Okay. So who was Secretary of Defense in the US until
TP.
last week? TP.
John Bolton.
Yeah.
Correct.
Oh.
It is Theodora. 3,
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Bella.
See, everyone thinks Bella's going to beat
No,
you. Maybe
I told you.
Theodora.
I told
Maybe
you. I
Theodora.
told you at the beginning. I'm not going to win.
I could also see this being the start of like an complete unbeaten. The Jeopardy James run where the guy won like 55 Jeopardies in a row earlier this
I
year.
must have missed that one.
I must have missed that one. Have you? All right. What was the name of the gangster?
Bella.
Oh
my god.
It's. Oh, I've just.
no. She's panicking.
No, I've forgotten.
Oh,
I know who
that's
it
a
is.
point
And it's
off.
Joe Biden. I know. And
Yep.
it's-
What was the name of the gangster that Joe Biden supposedly fought off when he was a lifeguard?
It's
I have absolutely
it's
no
like
idea.
it's 2 words. It's like
is?
Like a first
cuppy
name.
ping or
first
something.
name.
You're close. You had
It's
the
like
initials.
cup-
It's Corn
CP.
Pop.
Corn Pop.
Corn Pop is the stupidest name. Like,
What's a corn pop?
What?
It's a very
It's a
scary.
very
The gangster
scary man.
that he
Yeah.
met at the pool.
So is Bella back to 0 now?
Bella
Yeah.
is back to 0. so
my
I think it's, well, you never know who's going to get the Who Am I.
That's right.
All right. Now, it is final season for both the AFL and the NRL. I feel an
sports
AFL
questions. Here we go.
I feel an
So-
AFL question would be too easy for Pete. So name
no.
2 teams still in the hunt for the NRL championship.
Roof. Melbourne Storm and Canberra Raiders.
I wrote down Raiders. I'm assuming they're from Canberra. I
They are,
have
yeah.
no idea.
The only reason I know that is because on the telly before the footy on Saturday night, and I was like, can you change it over to the football, please? This is Melbourne. Anyway.
All right. Okay. So last question before we get into the Who Am I.
Yep.
After a heated office-wide dispute, how do you spell the word okay?
TP.
TP.
Oh, well, this is ridiculous.
Capital O and K.
Thank you very much.
I mean, the people playing at home are like, that is not
That
the
is
answer.
not-
All right. What would your answer be?
OKAY.
That's
Like
That's
any
just
other
wrong.
literate
I'm
Australian.
Correct point off.
Facts
for
don't
Pete.
care about your feelings.
Got only facts and logic there, Pete.
TP just hits me with a bit of shade.
All right. Sorry, coming into it. So Bella on 0. If you want to win, you're going to have to get the Who Am I on 5 points.
You could.
Bella's on 4. Pete's on 4.
It's hard to tell the difference.
Yeah.
2 very leading academic minds in my presence. And then Theodora on 3, the new challenger, the new voice. All right. So who am I? I will be celebrating my 62nd birthday on Saturday.
Oh, it could be anyone.
Could only, again, again
That's
with
what
the
we
other
always
thing,
say.
but it can't be anyone. It can
could be
only
anyone.
people celebrating
could
their
be anyone.
62nd birthday on Saturday.
That's
That
true.
is a very select group of people.
So Bella's clearly got to have a swing at this.
All right, Bella, you got to have a swing at this.
Why would I know whose birthday it is on
You
Saturday?
just have a
Just
swing.
think of a middle-aged
Just
person.
Think of someone who's 62.
And
It's
you
your
could-
only chance to
if you
defend
could
your
win the
title.
lot.
There's no points off.
That's famous.
There are points off.
No, I don't want to go. I don't want to go into the negatives.
That's true. Didn't we had a few consternating looks from an Evan Warren last week. All right, sorry, Bella. Unfortunately, your championship run has come to an end.
Wow.
But you can tie it actually if you get it on.
Yeah, I
I
don't know. I
first
don't know who's turning
4
62.
points. I first entered Parliament in 1998.
Oh, that's a good
I never
question.
know these people in Australia.
1998. Can you? Yeah, I don't know.
Again, the thinking out loud. It's just so important to an
Yeah,
audio-based
no,
quiz.
sorry. It's Australian
We need
politics.
thinking
can't be
music.
out.
I wasn't
No.
even born in 1998.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you
Who's
that young?
62?
I am so young.
Is it?
I
No,
still
no, that's
maintain,
great.
Theodora, you are going to know who this is.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
So, okay, so no one's taken for 4 points.
No.
62.
No.
Entered Parliament in 1998. All right, 3 points. I once absolutely lost it at a stewardess on a flight because I didn't get my meal.
Roof.
Roof. Oh, you'd hate to get a point off of this.
Oh, come on.
Kevin Rudd.
Oh, it's good. Right.
I knew it was Kevin Rudd, but I was like, oh no, it's not Kevin
We should be playing like your celebratory walk-on song right
Yeah.
now. Which one would it be? Gotta be Don't Look Back in Anger.
Don't go back in anger.
Yeah.
You know, I'd like to thank
It's
all the
gotta be-
sponsors that work so hard, all the boys. We did it!
All right, brilliant.
I've gotta shake
what
your hand.
what a moment for the podcast as
Yeah,
Peter Gregory
thank
takes
you.
out his first championship.
Thank God I don't have to come back next week.
Stop saying that.
The first of many.
Stop saying that.
Bella's Tuesdays have really opened up.
You could have ended it a lot earlier, Bella. Come on.
She tried. All right. Okay. That's it for the quiz. We'll go to the rest of the show. Congratulations, Pete. The quiz champion of the world. This is a big day for you.
Well, I got to say, it took a lot of hard work, but we got there in the end.
Yeah, how do you feel? Like
Elated.
Elated?
Euphoric.
How much are you looking forward to defending your championship next week?
Look, I just want to enjoy it for the next few days and then get into pre-season, and then you start at zero next year, don't you?
Hey, we're taking it 1 week at a time, all right?
That's
We're
right.
just getting around the boys. We're just getting geared up.
That's it.
All right, let's get through. Oh, and I want to say, so we had the David Limbrick on in the show earlier. Now, what we do want to say is David Limbrick is hosting a event to support nuclear power in Australia and to support nuclear power in Melbourne. So Sunday, the 20th of October at Parliament House in Melbourne is going to be the Stand Up for Nuclear Melbourne event. So you can go to Facebook, look up Stand Up for Nuclear, and you can respond, and there's going to be all the details that you need to know.
Should be good.
So here's the story I want to talk about because it is the perfect lesson in how the media works. And so we're calling this segment Let's Wait 3 Days, which is like a sort of internal metric Pete and I have of when a story breaks with an incredibly sensationalist headline, clearly designed to evoke emotion, you have to wait 3 days before actually reading an article.
Exactly.
Just for all the, right. But then, all the qualifiers come out. It's like, look at this amazing story. Next day. Okay, so just trick it back a little bit because actually this happened. And then the second day is like, well, we had another look at it and really the picture is this. And by the third day, it's like, we shouldn't have done that.
Yep.
So the number one.
We do this stuff every week.
Took
us 2 years to think of a title.
So here's one. So a story broke last week that the North Carolina Republicans, they couldn't get something through the North Carolina House. So they waited until 9/11 when all of the Democrats were at a memorial for 9/11, obviously, to put something up. There's no one around to vote no and it gets through.
Yep.
And the Washington Post runs with it. GQ runs with it. All these other places run with it. The whole world's like, how could this be? And then you just wait 3 days because eventually it turns out that it was only one of the Democrats actually at a 9/11 service. The rest of them were not anywhere.
Doing stuff.
Yeah, it wasn't like this scheming Republicans using using a day of mourning. It was just like there was a complete confusion as to when the bill was. It happened to fall on 9/11. No one told anyone. And the bill just went through because the Democrats weren't around because no one told them to be there.
Yep. Which is the whip's job.
So?
Which is the whip's job.
Yeah, which is the whip's job. And Pete loves, Pete loves to know what the whip is doing at all times.
Exactly. My favourite guy was the guy who was running.
Oh, how good was that?
Yeah.
I was going to say that to you. So that's Representative Graham Martin, who was running, and he sent a screenshot of the 5-mile route his phone logged to the journalist to prove that he was running. Sick flex, dude.
Yeah,
You could just say I'm running. You
That's
don't need to be like,
Ks.
look how much I run.
Yeah,
I was
exactly.
running. Did I tell you I was running? I like to fit.
5 miles.
Yeah. That's how the media works. Like, you just have to wait 3 days.
Yeah, well, the thing I like about this segment is because the reason it came back, which James forgot to mention, was his friend sent him this story, who's a lefty, and said, look how terrible you people are.
Yeah.
And James literally said, just wait 3 days, mate.
Yeah, and then bang, I continue to be right about absolutely everything.
We do it all the time.
All right, let's talk Port Phillip.
Well, Port Phillip Council here in Melbourne, the city of Port Phillip, what is with all these random organisations declaring climate emergencies?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say Port Phillip's a random organisation. Like, you do need local government.
Yeah, okay. I'm not saying we don't need local government, but what do they have to do with declaring climate emergencies? What does it mean?
Yeah.
Once we've declared a climate emergency, what now? Anyway, so they've done this. They are about to declare a climate emergency. And look, I'm only going to believe there's a climate emergency once rich people stop buying houses next to the sea.
Yep.
Anyway, the absolute battlers at the city of Port Phillip are set to declare a climate emergency. Greens councillor Tim Baxter said that the sea level rise and mass species extinction posed serious risks to local residents and should be treated as an emergency, but not just local residents, James, because Baxter also said that people in Bangladesh are at threat from climate change and we need to declare an emergency on their behalf.
Yeah.
Now,
sorry, can we just pause there for a second? Because that is my favourite part. It's like, not only is it like, they're saying the Port Phillip Council in Melbourne is not saying that Melbourne is under a climate emergency per se. They are saying Bangladesh is under a climate emergency.
That's right.
And Egypt and Vietnam.
That's right.
Like, I'm sure those countries are thinking, finally, Melbourne has weighed in on this.
City of Port Phillip, to be specific.
City of Port Phillip has weighed in on this. We can finally get some things going.
Exactly right. And the councillor, the good councillor must have forgotten to listen to the IPA podcast that week where we featured the story about Bangladesh, where the Bangladesh government themselves requested Australia to produce more coal to export to them. So don't worry, Mr. Baxter. The bangers are happy. They've got it covered. You just concentrate on Port Phillip.
Yeah, I also like the idea that if there's a climate emergency, there should be like martial law. Like, we'll suspend democracy, we'll do anything. No one has any property rights. We need to figure out the climate emergency.
that is the theory about what's coming.
Yeah, well, true. All right. Last story I want to get through, and this is my favorite story, potentially of the year.
Okay.
Maybe even the decade. But anyway, Joe Biden, Democratic frontrunner, the person who's not Marianne Williamson, as I will now henceforth talk to him about. A video's come out of him giving a speech, I think it's like 2 years ago. And look, I don't want to set it up any more than this, but anyway, he's talking about how when he was a lifeguard at a local pool at the place he was making a speech at, in Delaware, he ran into a gangster.
Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys. And I did, and back in those days, to show how things have changed, one of the things you had to use, if you used pomade in your hair, you had to wear a bathing cap. And so he was up on the board, wouldn't listen to me. I said, hey, Esther, you, off the board, or I'll come up and drag you off.
And it goes on and on. So eventually, what is it? So Corn Pop was armed with a straight razor and he's backed by other gang members. He's threatening to cut the future vice president. And instead of calling the police, Biden met Corn Pop and his cronies head on, having armed himself with a 6-foot chain. And after a standoff, Corn Pop backed down.
Okay.
Now, Pete, on a scale, just tell me through your initial thoughts. Did this happen?
James, I think we're going to have different views on this because I 100% believe this happened.
Really?
Yep.
You reckon there is a guy running around Delaware with a gang called the Romans and he goes by Corn Pop?
Well, maybe in the 70s. Joe Biden is a colourful character.
Yep.
And he's, say what you want about him, but I feel like he's lived a life.
Yep.
And this is completely in keeping with what I think he might have got up to in the 70s.
Look, okay, so that's not wrong. That Joe Biden's a colourful figure.
Yep.
But I just don't see a gangster. All right, so let's put it this way. You've been to a public pool recently?
Oh, in summer.
Enough that you'd be able to know what's in a public pool?
Yeah.
How much 6-foot chains do you remember seeing?
Oh, there's chains.
You remember seeing a 6-foot chain?
Well, that chain was given to him by a mechanic or something, wasn't it?
Look, I just don't. So why is a mechanic with a 6-foot chain hanging around a public pool and he's not standing up to Corn Pop?
Well,
there is no way any of this happened. This is exactly when you get into a lie and you realize they'll see through this lie if I don't hit them with some specifics.
Yeah.
And the specifics are good. The chain, Corn Pop, cronies, stuff like that. The pomade. A lot of words are getting mentioned here, but once you say that a self-respecting bad guy would go around calling himself Corn Pop, no matter what specific you hit him with after that, everyone's going to be like, no, I don't see it, Corn Pop. I don't see that.
Well, I'm sorry, James. I can't agree with you, mate. I think this is right up Joe's alley.
There is no way this happened, is what I'm saying. All right, that is it for the show this week. Thank you to David Limbrick and Theodora Pantelich. Congratulations again to Pete, winner of the quiz.
Very happy.
We'll have a new challenger, fresh meat for you to whack away with your quiz.
Where's Show Man Monday?
All right. See you guys. No, sorry. Make sure you're telling your friends and family about the show. If you are listening through Apple Podcasts or iTunes, make sure you leave us a 5-star review.
Yep.
We're also on YouTube. We've got the new Young IPA Podcast YouTube channel. We're filming this podcast and waving to a camera now. Pete is as well. So if you do like to watch your podcast through YouTube, you can go do that. See you guys next week.
See you later.